It started with 6 words: I just need some space. A reasonable request from a wife of 22 years, or so I told myself. But my gut, that primal compass we men so often ignore, was screaming that something was wrong. So one night, fueled by a tumbler of bourbon and a corrosive dread, I opened the app for her car. She told me she was going for a long drive to a quiet park to think, but the GPS told a different story. It showed a single glowing pin dropped on a street I'd never heard of, in a part of town we never went to. My world didn't just crack that night, it splintered into a million razor-sharp pieces. I thought my only choices were to break down or lash out, but what I uncovered next changed everything, turning a simple story of heartbreak into a calculated game of chess where I was finally learning the rules. You think you know how this ends? Think again. Before diving in, hit that subscribe button and comment below. Have you ever dealt with betrayal? Let's hear your stories. Part 1. The cold front. The silence in our house had become a physical presence. It wasn't the comfortable quiet of two people who knew each other so well that words were unnecessary. This was a charged, brittle silence that occupied the space between us, sitting at the dinner table, lounging on opposite ends of the sofa, and lying inches apart in the king-sized bed that had started to feel like a desolate, frozen tundra. I'm Mark, 48 years old. For 22 of those years, I've been Sarah's husband. We built a life in the leafy suburbs of Charlotte, raised a good son, Leo, who is now a sophomore in college, and settled into the rhythm that people call comfortable. I managed the IT infrastructure for a mid-sized logistics company, a steady, demanding job that paid the mortgage on our meticulously maintained colonial and funded Sarah's ever-evolving passions. First it was pottery, then a brief but expensive foray into landscape painting, and for the last few years her career as a real estate agent. I was the bedrock, she was the river that flowed over it, constantly changing course. I thought that was our strength. The change started subtly about 6 months ago. It was a slow fade, a gradual turning down of the temperature. The easy laughter during our shared glass of wine after work was replaced by her distracted scrolling through her phone. The casual touches, the hand on my back as I cooked, the arm linked through mine on our evening walks, all vanished. When I tried to bring it up, she'd wave it away. Just tired, Mark. The market is brutal. Her phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now her constant companion, clutched in her hand or placed screen down with a territorial finality. Notifications would ping at odd hours, and she'd silence them with a furtive flick of her thumb. Her appearance changed, too. The comfortable yoga pants and sweaters were replaced by form-fitting dresses for client meetings and expensive lingerie that I certainly wasn't the intended audience for. She joined a high-end gym, the kind with eucalyptus-scented towels and trainers who looked like they were chiseled from marble. It's for my energy levels, she'd explained, not looking at me. Gotta stay sharp in this business. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. This was Sarah, my Sarah, the woman I'd held while she sobbed after a miscarriage early in our marriage. The woman who'd held me when my father passed. We were a team. But the man in the mirror looked tired, and the man in my head felt like a fool. I'd packed on a sympathy 15 pounds after Leo left for college, a soft layer of comfort and contentment that suddenly felt like a layer of pathetic complacency. I'd sacrificed a promotion that would have required more travel years ago because she'd said she and a young Leo needed me home. I didn't regret it then, but now, the memory stung with a bitter irony. My sacrifices had built this beautiful, comfortable cage, and it seemed she was desperate to fly out of it. The conversation that broke it all open happened on a Tuesday. I'd made her favorite pasta, a bolognese that took 4 hours to simmer. She picked at it, her fork pushing the pappardelle around her plate. "What's wrong?" I finally asked, the silence stretching my nerves thin. She put her fork down and looked at me, her eyes, the same blue eyes that used to look at me with such unvarnished adoration, were now guarded, distant. "Mark, I think I need some space." The phrase hung in the air, a cliché so heavy it felt like it was sucking the oxygen out of the room. "Space? What do you mean space? You want to move to the guest room?" I tried for a joke, a weak, desperate attempt to lighten the mood. "No," she said, her voice flat. "I mean space to think, to figure things out, about me, about us." I feel like I've lost myself somewhere between being a mom and a wife. I don't even know who I am anymore. My heart hammered against my ribs. And you can't figure that out here with me. I feel like I'm suffocating, she whispered, and the quiet devastation in that one word was worse than any shout. I just need to get in my car some evenings, drive, and be alone with my thoughts. No questions, no expectations. Can you give me that? What could I say? If I said no, I was the controlling, suffocating husband she claimed I was. If I said yes, I was sanctioning this slow, agonizing drift into the unknown. Okay, Sarah, I heard myself say, the words feeling like gravel in my mouth, if that's what you need. Space, Part 2, the digital ghost, her newfound need for space, quickly became a routine. 3 or 4 nights a week, right after dinner, she'd change into something stylish, give me a perfunctory peck on the cheek that felt more like an obligation than affection, and head out. Going for a drive, she'd say. Need to clear my head. I'd stand at the window and watch the taillights of her white Lexus SUV disappear down the street. The first few times, I tried to be the understanding husband. I tidied the kitchen, watched a game on TV, and tried to convince myself this was a phase, a midlife recalibration. Maybe she really was just sitting in a car overlooking a lake, contemplating the universe. People did that right, but my gut knew better. The understanding husband was slowly being consumed by the suspicious one. The digital ghosts were everywhere. I wasn't a snooper. The very idea had always felt like a violation. But I was a man drowning, and I was grasping for anything that felt like a life raft. It started with the shared family cloud account, photos she took used to upload automatically. I'd see pictures of houses she was showing, selfies with her real estate partner, Linda, or a pretty sunset. Suddenly, the automatic uploads from her phone stopped. A minor change, but it felt deliberate, like she was curating her digital footprint, walling off a part of her life. Then came the phone bill. We were on a family plan, and I always paid it online. I never looked at the details. This time I did. I clicked the tab for call and text history. It didn't show the content, of course, but it showed the numbers. There was one number over and over again, dozens of texts a day. Phone calls late at night, some lasting over an hour, on the nights she was supposedly clearing her head. My hands trembled as I plugged the number into a search engine. Nothing. It was a burner phone app number, a digital dead end. The kind people use when they have something to hide. A cold dread, sharp and acidic, rose in my throat. This wasn't just in my head. My mind raced. How could I know for sure? Confronting her with a mysterious number from a phone bill would only lead to more lies, more gaslighting. She'd call me paranoid, controlling. I needed something concrete, something undeniable. That's when I remembered the car. Her Lexus had one of those fancy connected apps. We de-set it up when we bought the car 2 years ago. It let you remote start it, lock the doors, and find its location. I hadn't opened the app in over a year. My thumb hovered over the icon on my phone, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was it, the point of no return. Once I looked, I could never unsee it. Our marriage, whether it survived or not, would be forever defined by 2 eras, before I looked and after. With a deep, shaky breath, I tapped the icon. The app loaded, showing a picture of her white SUV. I tapped vehicle location. A map bloomed on my screen, a friendly blue dot pulsing in the center of our garage. She was home for now, but then I saw it. A small, innocuous tab at the bottom of the screen, trip history. My blood ran cold. It was a log, a complete, detailed log of every place the car had been, with dates, times, and durations. My finger, slick with sweat, tapped it. A list of recent trips populated the screen. Home to Harris Teeter, home to office, home to gym, all normal, all mundane. And then I saw the entries for the nights she needed space. Part 3, the pin on the map, the bourbon burned a welcome trail down my throat, a liquid courage that did little to calm the tremor in my hands. It was 9:30 p.m. on a Thursday. Sarah had left 2 hours ago, offering the same breezy, just need to drive for a bit. I sat in my leather armchair, the house silent except for the clink of ice in my glass and the frantic thumping in my chest. I opened the Lexus app again. I tapped vehicle location. The map zoomed in, not on a scenic overlook or a quiet park, but on a residential neighborhood 10 miles away, in a part of the city known for its new, soullessly modern condos and trendy wine bars. The pin glowed with an accusatory stillness. My mind reeled, trying to find a plausible explanation. Maybe she had a friend there, a new real estate client, but she'd never mentioned anyone in that area. And if it was a client meeting, why the secrecy? Why the "I need space" charade? Then my eyes fell back to the trip history. I scrolled back through the last 2 months, my thumb swiping frantically. The pattern was undeniable. Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, sometimes a Saturday afternoon, the same address, over and over. The car would arrive around 7:30 p.m. and stay for 3, sometimes 4 hours. A knot of pure, unadulterated rage tightened in my stomach. This wasn't thinking space. This was an appointment, a recurring rendezvous. I had to see it. I couldn't sit in this house, in this chair, stewing in the toxic juice of my own imagination a second longer. The bourbon had made my movements feel both heavy and dangerously light. I grabbed my keys, slipped on my shoes, and walked out into the cool night air, leaving the front door unlocked behind me. The 10-mile drive felt like 100. Every red light was a personal insult, every slow driver a test of my fraying patience. I was on autopilot, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my mind a chaotic slideshow of our life together. Our wedding day, the birth of our son, lazy Sunday mornings, the way she used to smile at me over her coffee cup. Were they all lies? Was I just a prop in the background of a life she was living for someone else? I followed the directions on my phone's GPS, a bitter irony that wasn't lost on me. As I turned onto the final street, Crestwood Lane, I killed my headlights, my heart hammering like it wanted out of my chest. It was a street of identical, 3-story townhomes, all sharp angles and dark-tinted windows. And there, parked under the amber glow of a streetlight about halfway down the block, was her car, her white Lexus SUV, a beacon in the darkness, signaling the complete and utter destruction of my world. I pulled my car over to the curb a block away, parking behind a large pickup truck where I could see her vehicle but remain unseen. I cut the engine. The silence that rushed in was deafening, and I just watched. What was I expecting? To see them through a window, to catch them in the act? I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't leave. This was real. The digital ghost on my phone screen had materialized into a gut-wrenching reality. My wife was in that house, with him. Who was he? What did he have that I did? Was he richer, funnier, younger? The questions were a swarm of angry hornets in my head. I felt a surge of white-hot fury, a primal urge to storm up to that door, kick it in, and drag her out. To confront this faceless man who had trespassed into my life and stolen what was mine. But then an even colder, more chilling thought settled over me. What if I did that? There would be screaming, denials, maybe a pathetic, messy fight on the manicured lawn. And then what? She'd see me as the crazy, jealous husband. He'd be the victim. I'd lose all control. No, that was her way of doing things, all emotion and impulse. My way had to be different. It had to be measured, calculated. An hour passed, too. My anger began to cool, hardening into something else, something solid and heavy. Resolve. I wasn't just a victim here. I wasn't just a sad sack whose wife was cheating on him. I was a man who had been lied to, manipulated, and disrespected, and I would not let it stand. As I sat there in the dark, watching the front door of that condo, a new plan began to form. This wouldn't end with a screaming match on a stranger's lawn. It would end on my terms. Part 4, a stranger's doorstep at 11:17 p.m. The front door of the condo opened. My breath caught in my throat. A man stepped out first. He was tall, lean, with that kind of effortlessly styled dark hair that probably cost $200 a cut. He was wearing a ridiculously expensive-looking sweater and tailored jeans. Even from 50 yards away, he radiated an aura of smug self-satisfaction. He was the cliché I never thought would touch my life. Then Sarah appeared behind him. She was laughing, a bright, carefree sound I hadn't heard directed at me in months. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close for a long, lingering kiss under the porch light, a perfect little tableau of domestic betrayal. The sight sent a fresh spear of agony through my chest, but I forced myself to stay still, to watch, to absorb every poisonous detail. This was my fuel now. She pulled away, touched his cheek, and then walked to her car. He stood on the porch, one hand in his pocket, watching her like he owned her. As her Lexus pulled away from the curb and drove past my hiding spot, I sank lower in my seat, my face burning with a mixture of shame and rage. She would be home in 15 minutes. She would slip into bed, smelling of another man's cologne and another man's home, and lie beside me as if nothing had happened. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. I waited until her car was long gone before I started my own, but I didn't go home. I drove slowly down Crestwood Lane, my eyes fixed on the condo, Unit 3B. I pulled out my phone and, with a grim sense of purpose, took a picture of the front of the building, making sure the unit number was visible. Then I did something the old Mark never would have done. I did a quick property tax search for the address on my phone. The results came up in seconds. The owner was listed as one Julian Croft. A quick social media search for that name plus Charlotte brought up his profile. It was public. Of course it was. His profile picture was him on a sailboat, grinning a perfect, white-toothed grin. His bio read, "Life coach and empowerment strategist, helping you unlock your authentic self." I almost laughed out loud. An empowerment strategist. He was empowering my wife right out of our marriage. His feed was a nauseating collection of inspirational quotes plastered over sunsets, pictures of expensive meals, and selfies of him looking thoughtful in various exotic locations. He was selling a fantasy, and Sarah, my pragmatic, grounded Sarah, was buying it hook, line, and sinker. When I finally got home, the house was dark except for the light in our bedroom. I walked in and she was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. The air was thick with her lies. I could smell a faint, unfamiliar scent on her, something musky and expensive. Julian's scent. I went into the guest bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, my face pale. The man looking back at me was a stranger, a man hollowed out by betrayal, but there was something else in his eyes, too. A flicker of something hard and sharp. The loving, slightly oblivious husband was dead. He had died in a parked car on Crestwood Lane. In his place was someone else, someone I was just getting to know. I spent the rest of the night on the guest room bed, my mind racing. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, methodical clarity. I thought about Leo. I thought about our 22 years, the house, the shared memories. Had any of it been real to her, this wasn't just an affair, it was a fundamental betrayal of our entire shared history. My internal debate raged. Part of me wanted to confront her, to scream and rage and demand answers. But the other part, the new, colder part, knew that would be a mistake. It would be messy and unsatisfying. She and Julian would paint me as the villain. No, the key was information, evidence, control. He called himself an empowerment strategist. A grim smile touched my lips. It was time for me to feel a little empowered myself. Part 5, the war room. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years. I told my boss I had a stomach bug, a lie that felt laughably small compared to the ones suffocating my home life. Sarah had already left for a showing, her eyes avoiding mine, a new, almost brittle cheerfulness in her voice. As soon as her car was gone, I made a phone call. "Chloe, it's Mark, I need you." My younger sister, Chloe, was a divorce attorney. Not just any divorce attorney, but one of the sharpest, most ruthless litigators in the city. She was all the things I wasn't: confrontational, cynical, and utterly unsentimental when it came to the law. We were close, but I'd never had to call her in a professional capacity. She was at my house in 40 minutes, a travel mug of coffee in one hand and her laptop bag in the other. She took one look at my face and said, "Oh, honey, what did she do?" I didn't cry. I was past tears. I laid it all out for her in the sterile quiet of my home office. The space, the phone records, the GPS history, the condo on Crestwood Lane, the life coach named Julian Croft. I spoke in a low, steady monotone, narrating the demolition of my life as if I were describing a technical problem at work. Chloe listened without interrupting, her expression hardening with every detail. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she took a sip of her coffee and said, "Okay, first things first, do not confront her, not a word. From this moment on, you are a ghost. You are a loving, slightly clueless husband who is giving his wife the space she needs." "I don't know if I can do that, Chloe," I admitted, the thought of facing Sarah at dinner making my stomach churn. "You have to," she said, her voice firm. "Right now, she has all the power because she has the secret. We're going to take that power back piece by piece, but we do it smart, we do it quietly." My office became our war room. Chloe was the general, I was her soldier on the ground. She laid out the plan. "We need evidence, undeniable, irrefutable proof," she explained, typing furiously on her laptop. "North Carolina is a fault state." If you can prove adultery, you have massive leverage in the divorce proceedings regarding alimony. Divorce. The word hit me like a physical blow. Intellectually, I knew it was the likely outcome, but hearing Chloe say it so clinically made it real. What kind of evidence? I asked, my voice hoarse. Everything, she said. Screenshots of the GPS history, copies of the phone bills. But we need more, we need visuals. She looked at me, her eyes sharp. Are you up for hiring a private investigator? The idea felt sordid, like something out of a cheap detective novel, but this was my life now. Whatever it takes, I said. Chloe made the call. By the afternoon, I had an appointment with a PI named Frank, a gruff ex-cop who specialized in marital infidelity. He promised discretion and results. My next task was financial. On Chloe's instruction, I spent the rest of the day logged into our online banking portal. We had joint accounts for everything. I meticulously downloaded 2 years' worth of bank and credit card statements, highlighting every suspicious charge I could find. There were so many. Lunches for two at expensive restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel charges from a real estate conference in Asheville a few months back. A recurring monthly charge for a high-end gym I now knew was near Julian's condo. And then, the kicker, receipts from a luxury lingerie store. She hadn't worn anything new for me in years. Each transaction was a small, sharp stab of betrayal. I was building a mountain of evidence, a monument to her deceit. With every click, every download, my grief was slowly being replaced by a cold, righteous anger. She thought I was a predictable, complacent fool. She was about to find out how wrong she was. Part 6, Gaslights and Whispers Living Under the Same Roof, as Sarah became a masterclass in psychological warfare. I had to play the part of the dutiful, slightly dim husband, while my mind was a whirlwind of legal strategy and simmering rage. Every meal was a performance. Every "how was your day, honey?" felt like a line from a script I was desperate to burn. She, on the other hand, seemed buoyed by her secret life. There was a new lightness to her step, a condescending sort of pity in the way she looked at me. One evening, I made a comment about her being out late again. "I told you, Mark, I need this," she said, her voice laced with that infuriatingly patient tone one uses with a difficult child. "You're getting a little clingy. I think all this space is making you insecure." Gaslighting. Chloe had warned me about this. She was twisting my legitimate suspicion into a personal failing. The old me would have apologized, backed down, and tried harder to be what she wanted. The new me just nodded slowly and said, "You're right. I'm sorry, I'll try to be more supportive." The look of relief on her face was nauseating. She thought she had me perfectly managed. The PI, Frank, was worth every penny. 2 days after I hired him, he sent the first email. The subject line was simply, Package 1. Inside was a folder of photographs, high-resolution, time-stamped photos of Sarah and Julian kissing in the parking lot of a grocery store. Holding hands across the table on the patio of a wine bar, her car, parked in his driveway overnight on a Saturday when she was supposedly at a women's retreat with her friend Linda. I stared at the images, my stomach twisting. Seeing the digital data was one thing, seeing photographic proof of her smiling into another man's eyes was another. It was visceral, it was final, there was no going back. I forwarded the email to Chloe with a one-word message, more. The whispers came a week later. I was in the family room, pretending to watch golf, when she took a call in the kitchen. She thought I couldn't hear her, but she'd underestimated the acoustics of our open floor plan house. "I know, Jay, I know," she was saying, her voice a low, intimate murmur. "It's just complicated. He's a good man, he just doesn't excite me anymore. He's predictable." A pause. "No, he has no idea. He trusts me completely. It's almost sad. It's almost sad." That line was the final nail in the coffin of any lingering sympathy I had for her. It wasn't just that she was cheating, it was that she pitied me. She looked down on me for the very quality, trust, that was supposed to be the foundation of our marriage. The love I felt for her curdled into something that tasted like contempt. I stood up and walked into the kitchen, my heart beating a steady, cold rhythm. She saw me and her eyes widened in panic. She quickly ended the call. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm as I opened the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of water. "Yeah, fine, just Linda going on about a difficult closing." She lied, her face flushed. I just smiled. A thin, tight smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Tell her I said hi." I walked away, leaving her standing there in a cloud of her own deceit. She had no idea that I'd heard. She had no idea that her sad, predictable husband was quietly gathering the ammunition that would blow her entire world apart. The game had changed. I wasn't just a player anymore. I was setting the board. Part 7, The Unexpected Asset. Chloe and I had a theory about Julian Croft. Men like him, all surface charm and vapid inspirational quotes, were rarely what they seemed. They projected an image of success and freedom, but it was usually built on a foundation of sand. We just had to find the cracks. Frank, the PI, was good at finding cracks. While he continued to document Sarah's affair with clinical precision, I gave him a new target, Julian. I wanted to know everything about him. His financials, his professional history, his personal life, everything. A week later, Frank called me. "You're not going to believe this," he said, his voice gravelly. "Your wife's empowerment strategist has a wife of his own." The line went quiet as I processed the information. A wave of something that felt like dark, hysterical laughter bubbled up inside me. It was perfect. Of course he was married. The hypocrisy was so rich, so poetic, it was almost beautiful. "Her name is Amelia Croft," Frank continued. "They live in a McMansion out in Ballantine. She's old money. Looks like she funds his entire lifestyle. The boat, the fancy car, the condo he's using as his personal love nest, it's all in her name." This was it. This was the leverage. This wasn't just a simple affair anymore. It was a tangled web of lies involving 4 people. Julian wasn't just cheating on his wife, he was cheating with his wife's money. "Get me her contact information," I said to Frank, my mind already spinning. This was the part of the plan where Chloe and I diverged. Her legal mind saw Amelia Croft as a potential witness, another piece of evidence. My mind, now wired for a more personal kind of justice, saw her as something more, a potential ally, an unexpected asset. Making the call was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. "What do you say to a stranger whose life you're about to detonate? Hi, you don't know me, but my wife and your husband are sleeping together in a condo you're paying for." I found a quiet corner of a park and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional. "Amelia Croft speaking." "Mrs. Croft," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "My name is Mark Peterson. I'm calling you about a delicate matter concerning your husband, Julian, and my wife, Sarah." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing. "I think you and I should talk," I said softly. We met for coffee the next day at a neutral location halfway between our 2 homes. She was elegant, poised, with sad, intelligent eyes that told me she wasn't entirely surprised by my call. She had suspected, she admitted, but had no proof. Julian was a master of evasion. I didn't show her the most explicit photos. I didn't want to humiliate her. I simply laid out the facts, the timeline, the GPS logs of the condo visits, the phone records. I presented my case not as a vengeful husband, but as a fellow traveler on a painful road. She listened, her composure unshakable, but I saw the flicker of pain in her eyes when I mentioned the condo. "I bought him that place," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "He said he needed it as a quiet office to meet his high-profile clients." The bitterness in her laugh was a mirror of my own. By the end of our conversation, we had an unspoken alliance. She wasn't interested in a messy public feud. Like me, she preferred a more strategic approach. She had the financial power, and I had the documented evidence. Together, we were a force to be reckoned with. "He has a major seminar coming up," she told me, a new, steely glint in her eye. "He's been planning it for months. It's his magnum opus on authentic living." She took a sip of her coffee. "Perhaps we can provide him with an opportunity to be truly authentic." The plan began to take shape. It was no longer just about exposing Sarah. It was about dismantling the entire fantasy world built on my money and Amelia's. The climax wouldn't be a shouting match in our living room. It would be a public spectacle, orchestrated and executed with devastating precision. Part 8, setting the stage. The perfect occasion presented itself a month later. It was my in-laws' 50th wedding anniversary. A huge party was planned at a local country club, a catered affair with all their friends and family. Everyone would be there: Sarah's parents, her siblings, our cousins, our lifelong friends. The entire infrastructure of our social world, all gathered in one room. Sarah was, of course, deeply involved in the planning. buzzing around with an energy that I now knew was fueled by her secret life. It was the perfect stage. My preparations were meticulous. I worked with a video editor Chloe recommended, a discreet professional who asked no questions. I compiled the evidence into a short, brutal 7-minute video. It was set to a poignant classical score, which gave it a veneer of tragic elegance. It began with photos of Sarah and me from our wedding, happy and young. It transitioned through photos of us with a baby Leo, family vacations, Christmas mornings, a highlight reel of the life she was discarding. Then the music would shift, becoming more somber, more ominous. The screen would fade to black and then the text would appear. She said she needed space to think. Then came the evidence, a map of the city showing the route from our house to the condo. Screenshots of the Lexus trip history, a relentless log of her deceit. The phone records with Julian's number highlighted in red, and finally Frank's photos, nothing lewd or pornographic. That wasn't the point. The point was the intimacy, the hand holding at the wine bar, the lingering kiss outside the condo. The photo of them on a weekend trip to the mountains, smiling for a selfie, a trip she'd told me was a solo journey for self-discovery. The final shot was a picture of Julian and Amelia Croft on their wedding day, followed by a simple text. Julian Croft, empowerment strategist and husband. I saved the final video file onto a thumb drive, a tiny piece of plastic that held the power to end 2 marriages and shatter countless illusions. I felt a tremor of doubt. Was this too much, too cruel? I thought of her voice on the phone. He trusts me completely. It's almost sad. The doubt vanished. This wasn't cruelty. This was consequences. The night before the party, Sarah was trying on her dress. It was a stunning emerald green gown that she'd bought for the occasion. She twirled in front of the mirror, looking radiant. "What do you think?" she asked, smiling at my reflection. "You look beautiful, Sarah," I said, and I meant it. She was a beautiful woman, but now when I looked at her, I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger, a brilliant actress who had been playing a part for months. "I'm so glad we're getting through this rough patch," she said, coming over to me and placing a hand on my chest. "I think the space is really helping me appreciate what we have." The lie was so effortless, so practiced, that it chilled me to the bone. I just nodded, a hollow feeling in my chest. "Me too," I lied back. She had no idea she was living her last day as Mrs. Sarah Peterson, respected wife and daughter. Tomorrow, she would be someone else entirely. Part 9, the anniversary gift. The country club ballroom was shimmering. Crystal chandeliers, floral centerpieces, the low hum of 100 conversations. Sarah was in her element, flitting from table to table, laughing, accepting compliments on the beautiful party she'd helped organize. I played my part, the proud, stable husband, smiling, shaking hands, and feeling like I was watching a movie of my own life. The toasts began after dinner. Sarah's brother went first, then her sister. Finally, her father, a good, decent man I'd always respected, stood up. He raised his glass. And finally, to my daughter Sarah and my son-in-law Mark, who have shown us all what a strong, 22-year marriage looks like. "We love you both," the room applauded. Sarah beamed, reaching over to squeeze my hand. Her touch felt like a brand. This was my moment. I stood up, tapping my glass with a spoon. "If I could just say a few words," I began, my voice steady. A hush fell over the room. All eyes were on me. Sarah was looking at me with a proud, encouraging smile. It was the last time she would ever look at me that way. 50 years, I said, looking at her parents. "It's an incredible achievement. It's a testament to love, but also to loyalty, honesty, and respect. Those are the things that build a life together." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Then I turned my gaze to Sarah. "Sarah and I, we've been on our own journey lately. In fact, Sarah has been doing a lot of deep thinking about our lives, trying to find herself. She told me she needed space." My voice was calm, conversational. People were nodding, smiling sympathetically. "I wanted to do something special for her tonight," I continued. "To show her that I've been thinking too. I've put together a little video. It's about memories and it's about discovery." I nodded to the AV technician at the back of the room, a young man I'd slipped a $100 bill to earlier. He dimmed the lights and a large projection screen descended from the ceiling. Sarah looked confused but still smiling. She thought this was a romantic gesture. The video started. The happy wedding photos, the pictures of Leo. I could hear soft awes from the audience. Sarah squeezed my hand again, a tear glistening in her eye. Then the music changed. The screen went black. She said she needed space to think. Sarah's smile faltered. Her hand went limp in mine. The GPS map appeared on the screen, the glowing line tracing her path from our home to Crestwood Lane. A murmur rippled through the room. Then the trip logs, date after date, a relentless chronicle of her lies. Sarah's face had gone ashen. She tried to stand up to say something, but she seemed frozen in her chair. Then came the photos, the hand-holding, the kiss. A gasp went through the crowd. I could see her parents staring at the screen, their faces a mixture of confusion and horror. And finally, the selfie from the self-discovery trip, Sarah and Julian wrapped in each other's arms, smiling brightly from the top of a mountain. The video ended with the photo of Julian and Amelia's wedding and the final, devastating text. The room was utterly silent. The only sound was the gentle whir of the projector. I leaned over to Sarah, my lips close to her ear, and whispered, "Is he a better thinker than I am?" The spell broke. She let out a strangled sob and fled from the table, pushing past stunned relatives, her emerald green dress a blur as she ran from the ballroom. I remained seated. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my water. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt a vast, empty calm. It was over. The lies were dead. The truth, in all its ugly, brilliant glory, was out. I looked up and met the eyes of Sarah's father from across the room. There was no anger in his gaze. Only a deep, profound disappointment. He knew, they all knew, the performance was finally over. Part 10, after the fallout, the aftermath was exactly what Chloe had predicted, swift and decisive. Sarah's public humiliation left her with no ground to stand on. There was no room for denial, no opportunity for gaslighting. Faced with a mountain of irrefutable evidence and the judgment of her entire family, she crumbled. The divorce was brutally efficient. With the adultery clause in full effect, she waived any claim to alimony. We sold the house, splitting the equity. I walked away with my half, my dignity, and a profound sense of lightness I hadn't realized I was missing. Sarah's affair with Julian imploded, as expected. Amelia Croft, my quiet ally, had her own confrontation. Armed with my evidence and her financial leverage, she systematically dismantled him. She froze his accounts, foreclosed on the condo, and filed for divorce, leaving him with nothing but his empowerment platitudes. Last I heard, he was living in a rented apartment, trying to rebuild his brand, but his reputation was in tatters. I spoke to Leo the day after the party. I told him everything, man to man. It was the hardest conversation of my life, but he listened, he understood, and he told me he loved me. Our bond, forged in honesty, became stronger than ever. The first few months were strange. I moved into a downtown apartment with a great view, a space that was entirely my own. The silence was different now. It wasn't the brittle, tense silence of a dying marriage. It was the peaceful, promising silence of a blank page. I reconnected with old friends, took up hiking, and rediscovered the man I was before I became Sarah's husband. I found a quiet confidence that wasn't dependent on anyone else's approval. I learned to enjoy my own company. There were moments of reflection, of course. In the quiet of the evening, looking out at the city lights, I sometimes wondered how we'd gotten so lost. I saw Sarah not as a monster, but as a woman who, out of weakness and boredom, made a series of selfish choices that burned down her own life. I found it in me not to forgive her, not yet, but to pity her. Her search for excitement had led her to a hollow man and left her with nothing. My revenge was not in the dramatic reveal at the party. That was just the mechanism. My true catharsis came in the months that followed, in rebuilding my life, in rediscovering my own worth, in realizing that my identity was not half of a couple, but a whole person on my own. I had not just survived betrayal, I had used it as a catalyst for a better, more authentic life. And that was a resolution no speechwriter, no matter how empowering, could ever have strategized. If this story hit home, like and subscribe for more gripping tales of love and betrayal. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you forgive or seek revenge? Was Mark's response justified, or did he go too far? Your perspective matters. Check out the next video popping up now for another twist-filled saga. Thanks for listening.